Most artists chase a record deal thinking that's the finish line, but the real money has never been in music royalties. It's in owning the companies, brands, and platforms that music advertises. A handful of artists figured this out decades ago, negotiated for equity instead of advances, and quietly built portfolios that look more like tech founders than rappers. Today, I'm breaking down 10 artists who got absurdly rich by treating their careers like businesses, from the foundational moves that changed the entire industry to the modern playbook of catalog sales and billion-dollar brand exits, starting with the template that every artist mogul copied. Jay-Z's either the most important business figure in hip-hop or the luckiest guy to ever hold a mic, but the data shows he's both. And I can prove it. He co-founded Rockefeller Records in 1995 because no label would sign him. When he sold it to Def Jam in 2004 for around $10 million, he became president and CEO of Def Jam. He learned how a major label actually works from the inside. Then in 2008, he founded Roc Nation via a $150 million deal with Live Nation. That wasn't a record deal. That was a joint venture that created an entire entertainment company handling music, management, publishing, and sports representation. But here's where it gets weird. His biggest wins aren't even in music. He sold 50% of Armand de Brignac champagne to LVMH in 2021. Industry estimates put his payout in the 9 figures. That's one bottle of champagne, more than most artists make in their entire careers. Then there's Tidal. He bought the streaming service for $56 million in 2015. In 2021, he sold a majority stake to Square for approximately $297 million. He bought it like a startup founder and exited at a multiple that would make a venture capitalist jealous. His music catalog still makes money, but beverage brands and equity investments produce structurally higher margins than recorded music. He built a portfolio where the rap career is the marketing and the businesses are the product. If you think turning champagne into a 9-figure exit is impressive, wait until you hear about the guy who turned vodka into a profit-sharing empire without owning a single distillery. Diddy, Sean Diddy Combs, proved that hip-hop culture could sell luxury vodka, designer suits, and the idea of success itself. But the way he structured his deals turned him from a record executive into something closer to a silent partner in a Fortune 500 company, except he was very, very loud about it. Most artists in the 90s got their money from album sales and maybe a clothing line if they were lucky. Diddy founded Bad Boy Records in 1993 and negotiated ownership and profit participation that most artists didn't even know to ask for. He didn't just sign the notorious B.I.G. and Mace, he structured deals that gave him substantial publishing and master recording income over decades. While other label heads were employees, he built Bad Boy as an asset he owned. But the real genius move came in 2007 with Ciroc Vodka. Most celebrities would have taken a flat endorsement fee and called it a day. Diddy negotiated a profit share arrangement instead, no upfront check, just a percentage of profits as the brand grew. Industry analysts estimated he earned tens of millions annually as Ciroc went from nobody knows it to every nightclub stocks it. He contributed brand equity and promotional efforts, and received an economic stake like someone who'd written a check for millions. The Ciroc deal became the blueprint. It transformed endorsements from here's money, say nice things, into here's a share of the company, now go make us both rich. That structure is now standard when major artists negotiate with consumer brands, and Diddy wrote the playbook. But if you think vodka partnerships are impressive, wait until you hear about the guy who turned headphones into a $3 billion exit to one of the most valuable companies on earth. Dr. Dre made more money from a single deal than most producers earn in their entire careers, and it wasn't even from music. Apple acquired Beats Electronics in 2014 for $3 billion, $2.6 billion cash, $400 million stock. Dre's stake was estimated at 20 to 25%. Do the math. That's several hundred million before taxes, making it one of the largest single liquidity events in music history. But here's the thing. This wasn't luck. It was a calculated transformation of intangible reputation into tangible equity. Before Beats, Dre had built serious wealth through Aftermath Entertainment, signing Eminem and 50 Cent and earning producer and label royalties from multi-platinum albums. That income was significant, but it operated on the scale of back-end points. Solid, but not venture capital scale. Beats started in 2006 as a high-end headphone venture with Jimmy Iovine. The genius was positioning. Dre's reputation as a producer translated into consumer belief that these headphones delivered superior sound even if audiophiles disagreed. By 2012, Beats commanded majority share of the US premium headphone market. The product wasn't just hardware, it was a lifestyle brand that happened to play music. Apple wasn't buying headphones in a streaming service. They were buying a youth culture gateway. The deal revalued Dre's brand from producer fees to Silicon Valley venture scale. His credibility as a producer became tangible equity in a consumer electronics company. He cashed out at a valuation typically reserved for tech founders, not artists. After taxes and dilution, his actual proceeds were lower than headlines suggested, but still enough to vault him into the upper tier of music wealth. But if you think selling headphones to Apple is the ceiling for artist-driven consumer brands, wait until you hear how 50 Cent turned a vitamin-enhanced beverage into a 9-figure payout. 50 Cent seems completely unstoppable when it comes to making money. But his real fortune didn't come from selling records or headlining shows. It came from doing something most artists thought was insane, accepting stock instead of cash, and I can prove it. In the mid-2000s, Glacéau, the company behind Vitamin Water, offered him what probably would have been a 7-figure endorsement deal. Standard celebrity stuff: show up, smile with a bottle, cash the check. But 50 negotiated something different. He took an equity position instead, reportedly a low single-digit percentage of the entire company. A few percentage points of a beverage startup versus guaranteed millions up front? Sounds like a terrible trade. Turns out, no. In 2007, Coca-Cola acquired Glacéau for $4.1 billion. Media reports placed 50's personal payout between $60 and $100 million before taxes. That one decision turned what might have been a nice payday into a life-changing capital gain. The Vitamin Water deal became one of the most cited examples in the entire music industry of an artist winning through equity, and it fundamentally reshaped how other musicians approached brand partnerships. But 50 didn't stop there. In 2014, he executive produced the Starz series Power. The show became a massive hit, spawned multiple spin-offs, and established recurring fees that kept the money flowing long after the original series ended. Then in 2015, he filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and everyone assumed he'd lost everything. Here's the thing, he hadn't. The filing was a tactical move to manage legal judgments and restructure debt. He exited bankruptcy and continued signing major TV production deals the entire time. The bankruptcy wasn't a collapse. It was financial engineering. If you think accepting stock over cash was smart, wait until you hear about the artist who turned his taste into a billion-dollar brand portfolio spanning streetwear, sneakers, and luxury fashion. Pharrell Williams. Pharrell is either the most underestimated businessman in music or the luckiest man alive who happened to be good at everything. Before you roll your eyes, hear me out. While everyone was arguing about who owns what masters, Pharrell quietly built a portfolio that looks more like a diversified investment fund than a music career. Music production, fashion, sneakers, high fashion, creative direction at Louis Vuitton, and the kicker, he owns meaningful equity in most of it. His wealth engine starts with the Neptunes publishing catalog. From the late 90s through the 2000s, he and Chad Hugo produced hits for Jay-Z, Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, and dozens of others. That catalog, with ongoing royalty income from global airplay and sync deals, can plausibly command a mid to high 9-figure valuation. That's before you even get to the fashion stuff. In 2003, he co-founded Billionaire Boys Club and Ice Cream with Nigo, blending skate culture, hip-hop, and Japanese streetwear into something that instantly had a cult following. While other artists slapped their names on generic apparel for quick cash, Pharrell built actual brands with sustained global licensing income. Then came the Adidas Hue line in the mid-2010s, which became one of Adidas's flagship collaborative lines. The sustained duration and global proliferation suggest it's been a meaningful pillar of his income for nearly a decade. In 2023, Louis Vuitton appointed him men's creative director. The real value isn't the paycheck, it's that the role elevates his brand equity across every other venture. Suddenly, Billionaire Boys Club isn't just streetwear. It's a brand curated by the creative director of Louis Vuitton. What makes Pharrell's strategy so compelling is that he treated taste as a transferable asset across industries, then monetized that reputation through equity, royalties, and creative director retainers. The portfolio compounds. Each piece makes the others more valuable. But if you think diversification across music, streetwear, and luxury fashion is a flexible business model, wait until you hear about the guy who turned a sneaker partnership into a multi-billion-dollar brand and then watched it all evaporate in a matter of weeks. Kanye West. Almost every major artist has had some kind of brand partnership, but Kanye West built something different. He convinced Adidas to let him run a billion-dollar business inside their company, take a massive cut of the profits, and keep the trademark to his own name. At its peak, it made him a billionaire on paper. Then it all vanished in a matter of weeks. Around 2013, Kanye signed with Adidas after a less favorable stint with Nike. The Yeezy Boost line launched in 2015, and the deal he negotiated was unprecedented. Reports placed his royalty between 10 and 15% of wholesale revenue. More importantly, he owned the Yeezy trademark. He wasn't licensing his name, he owned the brand. At its height, Yeezy was generating $1.5 to $2 billion in annual sales. Independent valuations suggested his stake could be worth several billion based on projected future cash flows. He wasn't a spokesperson, he was effectively the owner of a company within a company, with Adidas handling manufacturing and distribution while he controlled creative direction and captured profit participation that would make most CEOs jealous. But here's the thing about tying a multi-billion-dollar brand to a single volatile personality. In 2022, following anti-Semitic remarks and other public controversies, Adidas terminated the partnership. Production stopped, sales halted. The projected cash flows that had justified that multi-billion-dollar valuation evaporated overnight. His stake became worth functionally zero. The debate about whether Yeezy's success was due to his design vision or Adidas's infrastructure misses the point. It required both. He had the cultural pull, they had the factories and global retail relationships. When those forces separated, the brand's value collapsed. At least his brand wasn't quietly controlled by a corporate parent who never gave him ownership in the first place. But if you think one artist losing billions overnight is dramatic, wait until you hear about the one who built her entire empire by refusing to let anyone else control her work. Beyoncé. Beyoncé's either the most meticulous architect of narrative control in modern music, or she's got the rest of us fooled into thinking every move she makes is some kind of chess master stroke. Here's the thing though, I can prove it. In 2010, she founded Parkwood Entertainment, and this wasn't your typical vanity label. Parkwood is a vertically integrated operation handling music production, film, touring logistics, and brand partnerships. All the money that would normally flow to external managers and producers now stays in-house, with Beyoncé capturing the margins at every layer. Then there's the 2013 self-titled album drop. She structured it as a surprise visual release on iTunes with zero traditional promotion. The result, reportedly, more than 800,000 copies sold in the first 3 days worldwide. That move didn't just generate revenue, it rewrote the rules for how albums could be marketed in the streaming era. Her touring operation is where Parkwood's structure really pays off. Tours like Formation and Renaissance have collectively grossed well into 9 figures. But here's the kicker. Parkwood isn't just taking the performer's cut, it's also capturing profit as the production company, the IP owner, and the entity controlling merchandising. Every ticket sold, every shirt bought, a piece flows back through a structure she controls. The Netflix deal might be the cleanest example. She negotiated a reported $60 million agreement that included the Homecoming documentary, but Homecoming was documentation of her 2018 Coachella performance, an event she'd already been paid to headline. So she got the live fee, then sold the film rights to Netflix for tens of millions more, all while retaining creative control. One performance, multiple massive paydays, zero dilution of control. She treats her career like a studio, not a string of one-off projects, and the financial results follow accordingly. But if you think stacking revenue layers from a single performance is impressive, wait until you hear about the artist who got richer from lipstick than from platinum albums. Rihanna. Rihanna is the artist who left music to become a billionaire through makeup. And if you think that's an exaggeration, hear me out. Because the majority of her reported billionaire-level wealth comes from beauty and lingerie, not from streaming or touring. She's the clearest modern example of an artist becoming richer from everything except the thing that made them famous. Here's how it worked. In 2017, she launched Fenty Beauty as a joint venture with LVMH. She reportedly owns around 50% of the brand. Within its first full year, Fenty Beauty generated hundreds of millions in revenue. By the early 2020s, the brand's value hit the low billions, which means her stake alone is worth well into 9 figures. That's from makeup, not a single album sale involved. But here's what made Fenty Beauty different from every other celebrity makeup line that launched and died quietly. She centered the entire brand on radical inclusivity, launching with a foundation shade range so broad that it instantly addressed gaps in the market for people of color. Legacy brands had been ignoring this for decades. She didn't. The move generated massive earned media, turned the launch into a cultural moment, and forced competitors to scramble to expand their own shade ranges just to keep up. A year later, in 2018, she launched Savage X Fenty, a lingerie line valued in the hundreds of millions. Between Fenty Beauty and Savage X Fenty, she built a beauty and fashion empire that dwarfs her music income, even though she's one of the best-selling artists of all time. The partnership with LVMH provided the factories, supply chains, and retail relationships. She provided the brand equity and creative direction. And yes, fans constantly joke about the delayed albums. The running gag is that she's too busy selling eyeliner to finish a record. But that's actually the point. She figured out that owning a stake in a beauty brand that sells billions annually is more lucrative than releasing another album. The music made her famous. The business made her rich. But if you think one artist flipping the script on how music careers work is wild, wait until you hear about the artist who turned streaming dominance into a multi-hundred-million-dollar label deal and then built an entire lifestyle brand around a logo: Drake. Drake didn't accidentally become the most streamed artist of the decade. He turned that consumption into leverage, then built an empire on top of it. By 2022, he had signed a multi-year, multi-album deal with Universal Music Group worth up to $400 million over its lifetime. That's not a typo. 400 million, the kind of number usually reserved for tech acquisitions, not recording contracts. But when you consistently dominate global streaming charts, you stop being just an artist. You become infrastructure. Before that monster Universal deal, Drake positioned himself early. Around 2015, he partnered with Apple Music for exclusive content and branding that made him the face of their platform launch. Apple needed credibility for their service. He needed first-mover advantage and cultural positioning. Both got what they wanted, but the real long game has been OVO. October's very own started as a logo on a blog, evolved into a record label under Warner, and eventually became a multifaceted brand including clothing, flagship stores in Toronto and Los Angeles, and OVO Fest events that function as cultural anchors. OVO Sound signs other artists. OVO Apparel moves serious units. The stores aren't pop-ups, they're permanent retail. It's a lifestyle ecosystem that monetizes his fan base at multiple touchpoints, capturing margin that would otherwise go to third-party licensors. Here's the thing. Drake's streaming dominance isn't just about chart position, it's about bargaining power. When you can guarantee a label hundreds of millions of streams per release, you dictate terms. You get higher royalty rates, you get bigger advances. The combination of streaming income, mega deals with Universal and Apple, and the OVO ecosystem demonstrates streaming-era wealth building at scale. One catch: OVO's financials are almost entirely opaque. We know the brand exists and the stores are real, but revenue and profit margins are not publicly disclosed. That means estimates of how much wealth sits inside OVO versus his music catalog are educated guesses, not hard data. Still, the blueprint is clear. Dominate consumption. Use that dominance to negotiate structures that pay you like a partner, not an employee. Then build a brand that lives beyond any single album cycle. At least Drake figured out how to turn being the algorithm's favorite into a business model that doesn't require reinventing himself every 2 years. Unlike the next artist on this list, who decided the best way to own her career was to re-record it from scratch, Taylor Swift. Taylor lost control of her first 6 albums when Big Machine Label Group sold her entire catalog to a Scooter Braun-controlled company for over $300 million in 2019. She publicly called it her worst nightmare and then did something that completely changed the game. She announced she was going to re-record all of them. Her original contract included standard re-recording restrictions that expired after a set period. Once those restrictions lifted, she went back into the studio and recreated every song. Starting in 2021, she released Taylor's version albums. not covers, exact recreations of her own songs that she now owned, and they charted just as high as the originals. Fans switched overnight, sync partners started licensing the new versions, radio stations made the swap, the royalty flows that were supposed to go to the investors who paid hundreds of millions redirected straight back to Taylor. The deal she signed in 2018 with Republic Records reportedly granted her ownership of all future masters. Every album from Lover onward is controlled by her, not the label. Then came the Eras Tour. Launched in 2023, it became one of the highest grossing tours in history, pulling in billions. She turned it into a concert film, negotiated directly with theaters, and bypassed traditional studio distribution entirely. The re-recording strategy turned a theoretical contractual right into an economic weapon. Artists have always been allowed to re-record after contracts expire, but nobody proved it could devalue original masters at scale. Taylor did. The people who bought her catalog for $300+ million watched the asset lose value in real time. Catalog buyers now have to factor in re-recording risk. Lawyers bring it up in contract negotiations. It shifted power, and it may have permanently changed how artists think about ownership. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.